right.
Spread out.
Alright. Alright, septicemia, SIRS, sepsis, severe sepsis, septic shock. For SIRS, sepsis, severe sepsis, you need a minimum of 2 codes. A code for the underlying cause and a code for the subcategory for SIRS, and I'll show you what those codes are. The code for underlying cause must be sequenced first. So it's always going to be like that. So 1, underlying cause, and then 2, the SIRS. So basically it's going to look like this. When you have how do I say this? When you have bacteria in your blood, we call bacteremia. When that bacteria in your blood and your body starts to react, right, we call it septicemia. Now, when your body reacts to or more, remember those 4 things I showed you on the PowerPoint, your tachycardia, you have rapid breathing, your white blood cell count, and your temperature. Well, if 2 or more of those happen, that means your body's reacting to it. So systemic inflammatory response syndrome. So you have tachycardia, dyspnea,
like that, yeah.
what is this? High temperature, and low or high blood count, or white blood count. So you have to have a minimum of 2 or more.
You have SIRS.
2 or more for this. When this occurs, then you have SIRS. So what that means is, to code for these, you're going to have underlying cause plus SIRS. That means your tachycardia. You're going to have difficult breathing.
But you go code the condition under that.
Okay. And then your your white blood count. If you have minimum of 2 or more, you now have sepsis. Because you can have the underlying cause, but what if you only have 1 of the 4 occurring?
You don't have it.
Then it's not going to be SIRS. So that means it'll be septicemia. But when you have the underlying cause, right, let's say the infection or whatever it is, and it's causing SIRS, and 2 or more occurring, is now considered sepsis. Okay? So I'm going to write an equation form so you can see, because when I start adding to this, then it becomes severe sepsis. That means you still have this going on. Now you have an organ that's malfunctioning, so now you're going to have to use these 2 codes plus another code to identify the organ or the system that's malfunctioning. Okay, so it's going to be building on top of each other. Okay, so let me move to
Should I wait to ask you a question?
Who?
Should I wait to ask you a question?
You can ask me anytime you like.
You sure? Okay.
Okay, let me finish the next slide. I'm just teasing you. Go ahead.
So are we gonna code for those two symptoms or conditions?
For sepsis, you code 2. You're coding underlying cause, and you're going to code for the SIRS, which is 995.91 or 995.92. If it's sepsis, it's this. If it's this one, is severe sepsis. So what that means is you have to have the underlying cause. Your body has to react to the underlying cause, right? 2 or more. When these 2 occur, it's not considered sepsis. So you code for the underlying cause, and you're going to select 995.91.
Oh, okay.
If it's severe sepsis, you're coding for this instead of this, plus the organ dysfunction.
Got it. Okay, I code for everything else.
Pretty soon I'm cold for everything.
I don't know.
Been down.
Yeah, I'm very good. SIRS.
I will give that one code.
Organ dysfunction. Okay, so coding SIRS, sepsis, severe sepsis. Severe sepsis requires additional codes for associated acute organ dysfunction. So that's basically severe sepsis. So if a patient has sepsis with multiple organ dysfunction, follow the severe sepsis coding instructions. And then either the term sepsis or SIRS must be documented to assign a code from the subcategory SIRS. So sepsis or SIRS must be documented in order to code for SIRS. Okay, so let me, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna abbreviate this. Underlying cause plus SIRS plus organ equals severe sepsis. Okay. So if that's the case, you're gonna have a code for this, and then you're gonna have a code for sepsis. So whatever the underlying cause is, and then 995.91. When you 995.9, this digit will change depending on whether it's sepsis or severe sepsis.
Right.
This one, okay, one, you have the code for underlying cause. Your second code is going to be 995.92, right? Because the identifies this. And then your third code is going to be the organ dysfunction.
The kidney or the heart.
So that's going to be your sequence.
The underlying cause, an example of that could be a UTI.
Could be the, if it's causing it, yes, could be pneumonia too sometimes. It might be just the bacteria itself.
Right.
Right, so whatever the underlying cause, whatever it's causing it, you code for that plus the sepsis code. But the only way you can code for sepsis is any of these occur.
Right, right.
So either this, or that. Yes, has to be documented.
What is number 3? Organ dysfunction.
Organ dysfunction. So acute organ dysfunction. So that's severe sepsis. So you have the underlying cause, the code to indicate that it's severe sepsis, 995.92, and then the third one will be the organ dysfunction, because that's why you're coding for severe sepsis, because there is a dysfunction.
Beside under SIRS, under TAPI, what is that second word?
Right
there where you have this
Difficult.
temperature,
Dyspnea.
yeah,
Okay.
temperature, and then white blood
White
count.
blood count.
So on chapter 25, the complications, in your book, it has a list of the search stuff or complications. That's, you might want to put a sticky, I think I mentioned that in class, put a sticky or make a note that, that you might want to reference that.
Under complications.
Chapter 25, which is complications in your textbook, I made a note that in there's information about SIRS. So on your iPad, go to chapter 25, and there's information about SIRS towards the very end. And it talks about tachycardia, where you gotta identify 2 or more of those things occurring when you have an infection in your blood. Then that's how you identify SIRS.
Right, I know. I just wonder where it is in here.
Chapter 29 in your book.
No.
Yeah, iPad.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
Okay, then don't worry about your book. Don't worry about that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how do you identify what's tachycardia? How do you know what's this? Oh, what about the white blood cells? Remember below 2,000 or whatever? Yeah, that information. I'm talking about this.
Below
That this is
200,
in your book.
200.
200. I don't
Yeah.
know what the numbers are. I'm just saying the information that
It
is
said 2000
identifying
because I know that was 2000.
is in your iPad.
Okay.
Right.
Right? That's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about the manual itself.
Wow. Okay.
All right. So first
Yeah,
you're
I
good.
get it already.
All right.
Cool. Yeah, because I worked there.
No, I know about this because my mom had it. I know about this SIRS already.
Just saying.
Oh, it's gonna be a long Saturday, huh?
There's a lot there.
6:45.
I know.
Bring it out. 3 hours of sleep.
Well, I'm ready. I take energy
We
drinks.
need
That should be
20-hour drink, but those little ones.
Okay, I got lost.
We need like 4 bottles, bro.
Why doesn't the SIRS in here?
There we go. Okay, if it is present on admission and it meets the definition of principal diagnosis, the systemic infection code should be sequenced first, followed by the code for sepsis, severe sepsis, as required by the sequencing rule. So patient comes in, They have no idea they have sepsis or SIRS. They go in, the doctor said, okay, they have pneumonia, and they also determine that they also have SIRS too when they're admitted. You're gonna wanna sequence SIRS, sepsis. That's gonna be first, and then you sequence your pneumonia with that, or whatever the other condition that they have. So it could be that they end up getting that because of the pneumonia. But just know that if the patient is present at the hospital, get admitted, and they have sepsis or severe sepsis present on admission, you want to code for it, okay, as your principal diagnosis. So you're going to have two codes, there's only one slot. So the underlying condition will be first, and then your sepsis code. 995.9, 91 or 92. Total subcategory for SIRS can never be assigned as a principal diagnosis. So your subcategory, which is your 4th digit codes and your 5th digit codes, right? Your subcategory codes for SIRS are never listed as a principal diagnosis. So any localized infections that you have that are present should also be assigned. So let me give you some examples in here regarding septicemia. Right after septicemia, the first example, the patient was admitted and treated for SIRS with sepsis due to Streptococcus group D. The patient has cellulitis on the right leg. So that's a localized infection. So the 038.0 identifies, what do you call this? The underlying condition, the Streptococcus group D. 995.91 identifies the SIRS, so the body's reacting to it, right? So the 995.91, which is a sepsis, and then 682.6 is the code for the cellulitis of the right leg. That's your localized infection. Okay. The next example, patient was admitted with pneumonia due to Staphylococcus aureus. 2 days after admission, the patient developed signs of sepsis due to staph infection. Did the patient have sepsis at the time of admission? No. So what you would do is you would code for the reason they're going in, which is a pneumonia, due to Staphylococcus aureus. Although they developed sepsis after the admission, but you want to code for it as a secondary. So 482.41 identifies pneumonia with Staphylococcus aureus. 038.11 identifies the underlying condition, and then the 995.91 is your sepsis. So now if the patient was admitted with pneumonia and staph, the sepsis, then you would code the 038.11, the 995.91 first, and then your pneumonia second. Is it? Oh, okay. Oh, there we go. The patient was admitted with pneumonia due to Staphylococcus aureus and sepsis due to staph infection. So the 038.11, the 42.41 for the pneumonia, and the 995.91. Okay. So far, so good. Sepsis, severe sepsis. When sepsis or severe sepsis develops during the encounter, the systemic infection code and code for sepsis, severe sepsis should be assigned secondary, so we went over example. If documented is unclear whether sepsis or severe sepsis was present on admission, the provider should be queried. So if you're not sure if the sepsis was present, but you know they have it, and it's not clear as to when it was acquired, whether in the hospital or prior to, ask so that way you know, because there's going to be a difference in regards to reimbursement if it's they didn't acquire in the hospital. They actually were present with sepsis. It'll be a chunk change, so you'll get paid a little bit more. Yeah. Oh,
Sorry,
that's okay.
I didn't expect that.
All right, so let's
I'm glad you're not gonna be a doctor out.
I'm gonna be like, ew.
You're gonna be over here, ew.
scare the patient.
You're gonna be like, ew, get out of my room then.
Can't see that.
All right. Oh, been already? Okay.
What?
Sepsis, SIRS with localized infection. So again, we talked about that one with the cellulitis. That's a localized infection. Basically, what they're saying is if they have sepsis, SIRS with the localized infection, you code for your sepsis, SIRS first, and then code your localized infection. So the example with the cellulitis, that's the example for that. All right, bacterial sepsis and septicemia, most likely a code from category septicemia in conjunction with the code from category SIRS. So when you have septicemia, basically they're just saying it's an infection. If you have a bacterial septicemia like streptococcal sepsis, streptococcal septicemia, you want to look for septicemia or sepsis and then look for streptococcal. But you want to look for that. It's still going to be SIRS as long as the body's reacting to it. Then you look for your 995.91 or 92. So sometimes your sepsis and septicemia will be more specific. So you can actually look for the streptococcal. So let's look for septicemia. Actually, I'll show you. Let me sit down. Septicemia.
Septicemia, the bottom. So what's streptococcal? 518. Streptococcal. Then all they have septicemia.
Okay, so you see where it says streptococcal. So look for streptococcal. So this is your underlying condition or cause. So the streptococcal is basically what's causing that. Let's see, where's the other one? Staphylococcal. If it's Staphylococcal aureus, 038.1, 038.10. So basically what they're just saying here that sometimes it'll be more specific. You have a combined code that identifies the organism in it. So bacterial sepsis or septicemia, you look under septicemia, you find the underlying inside there, the organism, then you code for it, code for severe sepsis or sepsis, 995.91 or 92. Okay, so you're gonna have two underlying causes, so you're gonna wanna look under septicemia, right? And then SIRS.
For SIRS, right?
SIRS, no, you don't have to, you can try SIRS.
SIRS is septicemia.
But it's under the additional code, 995.91.
It's going to be under 99. SIRS is 995.9, and then whether it's sepsis or septic shock, we determine the 5th digit code, 1 or 2. So if you go to SIRS, page 521, systemic inflammatory response syndrome. If the body's reacting, right, you're getting a reaction, temperature, white blood cell drop or increase, and it's due to infectious process. What's that infectious process? That's the bacteria that's going through the system. So that would be 995.91. So the coding guideline is that if your body's reacting, any one of these, 2 of these 4 things are occurring, well, they want to know what's underlying cause, what's causing it. So you would go to the septicemia, find out what's the organism that's causing it, plus you use SIRS to indicate that your body is reacting to. So if it's reacting to infectious process, 995.91 is with acute organ dysfunction, that's severe sepsis. So it would be 995.92. You see how that works? So what the question, what they're doing here is if I go in and my heart rate is so high, and my temperature is high, and my blood count is so high, they want to know what's causing it, right? So we know I have SIRS, because my body is reacting to something. So what's causing it? The underlying cause. So that's why they're saying is when your body does this, and they have staph, right? These 2, you put a code for this, and then define whether or not it's just reacting to it, or is your organ system is malfunctioning. And then that's when you select your 995.91 or the 92.
92.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, you explain it like it's so like easy though.
You know how it took me years. Every time I teach this, people always got confused,
Yeah.
and I had a hard time trying to explain it. So I had to find a way that I could understand it because I knew how to do it. I just didn't know.
How to explain it.
Yes. So the way I came up with is with an equation. I have to have diagrams, like with the HIV stuff. I have to have a diagram for me to understand. So the same thing. So that's why I came up with the equation. You know, you have the underlying cause plus the SIRS, which is any of those two or more causing it. Then you would have the two codes. It's considered sepsis. If there's an organ dysfunction involved, then now it's called severe sepsis. And then you just identify what you're in code for.
I wish you had an equation for every single chapter.
I wish I could too.
You should put your equation in your PowerPoint.
Oh.
Yeah.
I did, you know what? I got home late. That's why the PowerPoint you're looking at are identical because I haven't had time to.
Yeah, but I'm just
Update.
like you,
Come
I'm
in,
very
Ashley.
visual.
I'm sorry, but you wouldn't happen to have an extra dry erase.
Oh,
Give it to the other
No,
guy.
not the eraser.
Marker.
the Parker?
Yeah. I mean, if you need
For a
it.
small fee, we do.
Um,
Lunch.
Sarah, you gotta put your name on your markers. Sarah,
Okay, this-
are you gonna, they gonna give it back or what?
Probably
They
not.
are not.
But you know, I stuck this in the other room, so that's okay. That's probably why you don't have them.
Karma.
I'll buy more. You wanna buy me some?
Who, me?
No, she gonna get them back.
No, my kids get you. They need 12.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, you gonna knock on their door.
Actually, right. If it wasn't for Ashley, I would never go to the concert. He's the one that got tickets. He
Oh,
couldn't
yeah,
go.
they're.
So he gave me the mic out, yeah. So he gave me the tickets.
You went to the
Last
wedding.
night.
Last night, oh, it was nuts. He was good.
That's what he was talking about. Would you go black?
That is a whole thing, so.
No, then you don't get your credit back, right?
Yeah.
We're trying.
He said that. That's what she was talking about, right?
Yeah. She may say you weren't paying attention. That's what she's saying. Hey, you're lucky those two are separating the two guys.
We need that great one of China to separate up.
At least when you guys watch the video, you can ask them.
We need the green one of China.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need a clue, that's what we need.
10-10. All right, let me finish the septicemia stuff. We'll take a break and we'll come back and we'll go.
That was fast.
Okay, septic shock. Now, what happens when you get septic shock? You're gonna code the underlying systemic infection. So just like this one, the underlying cause, right? You're gonna do 995.92. You're gonna code 785.52 for septic shock, and then any acute organ dysfunction should also be assigned. The code for septic shock cannot be assigned as a principal diagnosis. So basically, septic shock has to do with circulatory issues, maybe like low blood pressure, hypotension, stuff like that. So septic shock generally refers to circulatory failure associated with severe sepsis. It represents a type of acute organ dysfunction. So for all cases of septic shock, the code for the systemic infection should be sequenced first, followed by 985.92. So basically, in order to code for septic shock,
Another equation, I like it.
So you're gonna do the underlying cause, then it's already gonna be severe, so you're gonna do it in a 995.92. And then you're gonna do the septic shock.
all right, so you have severe sepsis, right? Because the only way you can code for septic shock if you have severe sepsis. When you don't have severe sepsis, you cannot code for septic shock. So if you have severe sepsis and you have circulatory failure, you now have septic shock. If that's the case, this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna code for 1, the underlying cause, 2, 995.92, right? 3, they want you to code for the 785.52, and then for the underlying, the acute organ dysfunction.
Oh, so no matter what, gonna have an acute organ dysfunction then, yeah?
You have to, because that's what
It's
severe
already
sepsis
severe,
is.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're gonna be the organ dysfunction.
So you have all of this going on. If you also have circulatory failure, basically you have septic shock. So in order to have septic shock, you have to have severe sepsis, right? Underlying cause, severe sepsis, the organ dysfunction, plus the circulatory, gives you septic shock. So this plus this is basically this.
Plus circulation.
Circulatory failure.
Circulatory.
That's basically what's going on. Okay, so let me read this again. So septic shock generally refers to circulatory failure associated with severe sepsis. Okay.
I think acute organ.
Therefore, it represents a type of acute organ dysfunction.
Shock dysfunction.
Okay. So for all cases of septic shock, the code for systemic infection should be sequenced first. The 995.92 that identifies severe sepsis, 785.52 that identifies it as septic shock, and then also additional code for the acute organ dysfunction should also be assigned.
So 4 codes then,
At least, yes.
at least.
Okay, so the other.
Right, so an example here is the patient was admitted with pneumonia due to Staphylococcus aureus, right? Several days after admission, the patient developed septic shock due to Staphylococcus sepsis. So what they're coding here is you have your pneumonia, right? Because they didn't have sepsis until after they were admitted.
Right.
So you're going to code for the pneumonia first. Then you have your septic shock. So you need the 038.11, which is the underlying cause. And if it's septic shock, you basically have severe sepsis. So 995.92, which is second code.
Right.
And then you have your
Septic shock.
785.52. Okay. So first again.
Good.
Let's see. Okay, sepsis and septic shock, accompanying pregnancy. Okay, we're going to cover those in chapter 11 when we get to pregnancy, so I'm not worried about that right now. Negative or inconclusive blood culture do not preclude the diagnosis of septicemia or sepsis. So basically what they're saying is that your blood cultures, right, don't necessarily mean that the patient has septicemia or they have sepsis. Okay, so negative or inconclusive blood cultures, right, do not preclude. Newborn sepsis, how do you code for that? When we get chapter 15, I think, that's for newborns. We'll get into the coding guidelines for newborn sepsis. So pregnancy and newborns we'll see a little bit later on in a couple of weeks. Let's see. All right, post-procedure infection. Okay, we talked about that. That was in chapter 25, right? Post-procedural.
Yes.
Right, in chapter 25, we talked about the post-procedural infection. So if you have a post-procedural infection, the post-procedural sepsis complication, 998.59, right? That's your post-procedural, that's a complication. Post-procedural infection, and then appropriate codes for sepsis. And then an organ, additional codes for acute organ dysfunction if it's severe sepsis. Right, patient was readmitted after undergoing surgery last week. Patient being treated for post-op sepsis. They got infection after having surgery. So you have a complication code, and then you have your sepsis code. And then if it's a severe sepsis, then, so basically all you're doing is, if a patient had surgery, after the surgery they got sepsis, depending on whether it's sepsis or severe sepsis, you use the same sequence, you just gotta add the complication code. Post-procedure complication, post-procedural. So a lot of the stuff you're just adding on to the equation.
In the front or the back?
This will be in the front. Because if they're going in for an infection after the surgery and they got sepsis from that, then you use the same sequence order except you use your complication code. Complication post-procedural. So 995. So 998.59.
998.59
underlying cause plus SIRS equal, plus 998.59.
Then your codes for these equations depending on what kind of sepsis they have. So you're just adding one code to the front.
995.
To indicate they go back in for treatment for post-procedure infection. There's a complication. So first again?
So wait, no.
You go.
Sepsis due to post-procedure infection. So that's gonna be 2 codes in front of all these codes, right? The
No.
complication and the post-procedural, or just the complication?
Okay. In chapter 25 on Thursday, the first thing we talked about was the post-procedural codes. If I had surgery and I go back in because I got an infection at that site and I become septic, because of that, I need a code to identify why I'm going back into
Right.
the hospital. Well, it's because of an infection,
Right.
post-procedural infection. So I would use a code to identify that I'm being admitted for post-procedural infection is a complication. And then I will list all my sepsis codes, depending on the type of sepsis that I have. So what I'm saying is, if you have an infection after surgery and becomes septic,
Right,
if it's sepsis or severe sepsis, you can use any one of these sequencing order. The only thing you're gonna add to the beginning of the sequence is a complication code.
got it.
So a lot of this stuff, you're just building upon depending on the situation of the patient.
Adding codes in.
Yes.
Can I ask you one more question?
I think when you're up already.
Okay,
I'm
so we
just
going,
charging you.
so then we going still.
Ask as many questions you
We
want.
still going for after the post-procedural operation, they going back in because they developed sepsis. So we going to code first. The principal diagnosis is going to be the complication. The second diagnosis is going to be the underlying cause.
Yes.
Still, yeah,
Right,
okay,
so that's
okay, I got it.
So whatever sepsis, whatever type of sepsis they have, sepsis or severe sepsis,
Uh-huh.
you follow that sequence order and you just
Right.
add the complication code to the beginning of the order.
Got it.
Yep. So for severe. Okay. Okay, sepsis, severe sepsis associated with non-infectious process. Okay. The condition that meets the definition for principal diagnosis, the code for the non-infectious condition should be sequenced first, followed by the code for systemic infection, and either the code for sepsis or severe sepsis. So that's like if you have like a fracture or burn, and then all of a sudden you become septic, right? We talk about non-infectious process in the burn section. Let me go back. Here. No, they don't. Okay. No, they don't. Okay, I should have marked one. So basically what they're saying is that if you have a non-infectious process and you get sepsis, you're going to code for that non-infectious condition first, and then you'll code sepsis second. Okay. So like when you have if you had a burn or you had like a fracture, because sometimes fracture or trauma can cause you to become septic. And so what they're saying is when you have a non-infectious process, you want to code that and then code your sepsis. So additional codes for the associated acute organ dysfunction should also be assigned for cases of severe sepsis. So basically what they're saying is if you have a non-infectious process and you have sepsis or severe sepsis, you're still going to use those same equation, except the non-infectious process code will be in the beginning.
Right.
Okay, so a lot of this is just interchanging. You're using the same sequence, except you're going to change it depending on what the non-infectious process is. So there's complication, and then your sequence for sepsis and severe sepsis. Non-infectious, that code for non-infectious, and then your sequence for sepsis and severe sepsis. So as long as you know these sequence, you can just add stuff or delete stuff based on what it is. That's the best way to remember it, how to do it. Okay. All right. Are we on the last slide for sepsis? Okay. Yeah, the sepsis, severe sepsis meets the definition of principal diagnosis. The systemic infection and sepsis code should be sequenced before the non-infectious condition, right? So if it meets the definition, list that first. When both associated non-infectious condition and the sepsis meet the definition of principal, either may be assigned as a principal. So basically what they're saying is if you have the non-infectious or you have sepsis, depending on the reason why you're going in, you're being admitted for, you want to list it first. Because you can get sepsis after you're admitted for the non-infectious process. But if you're going in and you have both the non-infectious and you have the sepsis, they're saying that either one can be principal, you can list either one. But I would depend, because sepsis, well, it also depends on the what the infection is. Normally I would go the sepsis because usually you require more resources, but then again, you want to find out what that non-infectious process is.
Yeah,
It
give
may
me
be
an
more.
example of that.
Okay, I think I got that.
You like that?
Give me an example of non-infectious process.
Yeah, like burn or fracture, something like that. Because if you have a burn, it doesn't get treated appropriately, sometimes the infection may affect the whole body, right? And so if I go in for a burn and while I'm in the hospital, all of a sudden I get sepsis, I'm gonna cope with the burn and still cope with the sepsis.
Okay, so if you, okay, let me just get this in, right, okay. If you get admitted,
I know, I can use my tongue right in the middle of my word.
okay, so if you get admitted, if you get admitted and then you receive sepsis, you code the reason why you got admitted first and then the sepsis.
Yes.
But if you got, if sepsis was present on admission, you do the sepsis first and
You
then
do the sepsis.
Okay.
Yeah. Now sometimes the two conditions can be both the principal diagnosis.
Or either or, right?
Yeah, so they're saying that either one, but because sepsis require a lot of resources, I would normally code it
The
first.
sepsis first.
But I want to see what the other non-infectious condition is and see which one would be better to.
More severe than.
So you code the sepsis first and then you code the infectious process.
That's if you get
And then the
Okay.
underlying cause and all that stuff.
All right, so we'll take a break.
Yes.
Take a 5, 10, 15 minute break.
That's it.
Yeah, 5, 10, 15. So come back about 10:40. Come back, we'll finish this.
Infectious process.
Yeah, but.
And then,
It could be either or.
Right, like this
Yeah,
is
we'll go
the
to
non-infectious
chapter
process and
10.
there's
Oh, we'll do
also
some coding, then we'll go into
code of
how's that?
infection, the infection process first.
Yeah.
Okay. And then code accordingly, yeah, all the way down the underlying cause and all that.
It all depends if it was present on admission.
Right.
That's what.
And they've had 3/4 like accidents.
Got it.
Adam's at work because he had a DUI this morning already. So,
Who is?
no, Adam is at work because one